Happy Wednesday! Today is episode 3 of In the Spotlight, and we have a new theme, and our theme this week is identity. Identity is probably one of my favorite themes because it's something that everyone deals with, and it's dealt with in a variety of genres, from realistic fiction to, like post-apocalyptic zombies. Interestingly enough, all the books that I chose were realistic fiction, and that was not done intentionally, but they are some of my favorites that deal with identity, so let's just go ahead and get started. So the first book that I'm going to recommend for identity is Sarah Dessins' What Happened to Goodbye, which I read actually a couple of days ago. I did not originally have this in my list, but I read it and I thought it was fantastic, and it's about a girl who lives with her dad, and her dad essentially goes around and takes over restaurants and that are failing and fixes them up, and then, moves on to the next one. She lives with him, and they're traveling, and every time she gets to a new place, she changes her name, her identity, what she's about, in order to, keep people at a distance. And then she ends up somewhere where she doesn't end up doing that. And it's really like, who is McLean? So the second book I want to recommend is Parrot Fish by Ellen Whitlinger. It's a coming out story. It's also, I guess, 2 weeks in a row where I've had a book featuring a character who is transgendered. But Angela is a female-to-male transgender who is starting to go by Grady. And while this feels right to him, he didn't expect the reactions of his family, so he's trying to figure himself out and figure out what he wants out of life while simultaneously dealing with the reactions of his friends and family and school and whatnot. You can see that I read the crap out of this book. I used it for a paper I wrote on transgender characters in young adult literature. I listened to the audiobook the first time through, and one of the things I appreciated about the audiobook was they did use a male voice actor. And I thought that was a fantastically sensitive approach to the portrayal of the character in this book. Continuing on the diversity train, the next book I'm going to recommend is older, I guess, but you really can't go wrong with it. It is Monster by Walter Dean Myers. Steve Harmon's on trial for murder. He was with a group of people who robbed a store and killed the store's owner. And one of the other characters says that he is a monster. Now, the question that Steve is dealing with throughout the entire story is he actually a monster? It's one of those things that Myers doesn't tell you at the end of the book. He leaves it up to you as a reader to decide whether or not Steve is in fact a monster. And I think it's a good place for conversation. Another teacher said something about monster in the comments of one of my other videos, I don't know, a couple months back, which is what brought this one back into the forefront for me, because while I hadn't forgotten about it, we're starting to teach it next year, it's not one that I think of immediately, and I don't know why that is. The diversity in my selections was not planned. It just kind of happened that way. So we've got Anglo characters, and we've got a character who is transgendered, and we've got a character who is African American, and now we have a character, or characters, who are Mexican American. Aristotle and Dante discover the secrets of the universe. And it is a story about the friendship between these two very, very different Mexican American boys. But their struggle with identity it comes in terms of being Mexican enough or not Mexican enough, which it hit me on a personal level. I can identify with these guys because when I was a kid, my cousins called me an Oreo because of the way I choose to speak, because I don't speak like one of those. I don't want to categorize people as thugs, but Thug Notes was the last thing that I watched on YouTube. So, because I don't speak with the African American vernacular, and because I like to read books that makes me apparently white on the inside. Yeah. So I get their struggle between not being Mexican enough and being too Mexican. It's also a conversation, and as much as I said I wasn't going to bring my classroom into this, it's also a conversation that I hear in my classroom a lot, about some people being more Mexican than others, and So I couldn't read this book without thinking about my students because of where I happen to live and the students that I happen to teach. But it is beautiful, and maybe they discovered the secrets of the universe, life, the universe, and everything. An answer that is better than, 42. Next week, Charlotte over at Ramblings of an Elf Pyre will take on the same theme and recommend to you her books that have something to do with identity. If you've got recommendations on this theme, leave it in the comments here or over on Goodreads, and I will see you in the comments soon. Until then, I'm the Supplier wishing you happy reading. Don't forget to be awesome.